Welcome to A Life Lived Joyfully, brought to you by the Guadalupe Radio Network. Join us as we explore the call to holiness and the life of virtue. Here's your host, Monsignor Charles Pope.
Hi, from a very chilly Washington, D.C. Very strange. May is never strange. May is always up and down. But anyway, it's cold. It's in the lower 50s right now, and very gloomy looking out there. But anyway, here we are. This is going to be Mother's Day weekend coming up, and I think that I want to share an article with you written by Carrie Gress. She's someone I've read a lot over the years, and I think she's got a lot of important things to say. I've thought about having her on the show as well. At some point. But anyway, the article regarding Mother's Day, she mentions something that I've run into as well, that there are some people who just get a little annoyed that we do Mother's Day blessings. Or alternately, not so much that we do Mother's Day blessings and Father's Day blessings, but we don't do Singles Day blessings or some other, you get the idea. And so the title of this article that Carrie wrote was "Being Triggered by Mother's Day Proves the Irreplaceable Role of Moms." And she writes then about this sort of odd thing. There's a lot of increasing literature and commentary out there that that Mother's Day is considered as an annoyance to some people. And what everybody uses, nothing is more American than apple pie and Mother's Day. And yet, here we are, every time you want to praise anybody, well, what a bit, and this is how we are. So, let me read some opening lines. And by the way, we'll talk about this article. I might have a second topic later in the show, but I want to start out with this because it is Mother's Day weekend coming to us fast and furious. So again, she starts out here, Carrie, Mother's Day seems to be as American as apple pie. It used to be the biggest day of the year for telephone companies, and everyone was just trying to call to talk to their mom. And, I'll just add that in the churches, we often do. We call women up for blessings or ask them to stand, and it's maybe a time we'll have a little tokenary gift or something for them. And, as I say, this has always been the norm, and it still is. I don't think a lot of people are irritated by Mother's Day, but it's in a small vocal group that every year I get a little bit of pushback, Now, she says here, of late, however, it has become controversial to even talk about Mother's Day. The cancel culture has come to call. The difficulty with Mother's Day is not new. As Catherine Newman wrote in Salon way back in 2015, like a lot of you, I have friends who have tried desperately and unsuccessfully to become mothers and carry a great deal of pain and shame associated with that. So for them, this holiday silently burns. By the way, that's a perfect definition of envy. That kind of a statement, that we're sorrowful or angry or bitter at some blessing that someone else had because somehow I take it to lessen my own status, and they get this and I don't, really honestly, the only solution to this terrible thing called envy is to have joy and zeal, when we see that someone else has received either a blessing or has a gift or some skill or something that is worth praising, you see. But again, this is kind of where we are as a culture. A lot of envy out there that goes on. Now, it says here there's a new retailing trend considering the struggle of women like Newman. This allows women to opt out of the marketing emails about Mother's Day. It is perhaps a generous way to help women, but it also speaks of a larger culture-wide problem. Not unrelatedly, for example, the CDC just reported that the U.S. birth rate is at an historic low. Motherhood is in serious peril on several fronts, and so again, the low birth rates. There's an awful lot of women who never have children, increasingly in numbers, and. So, as I say, in the African-American community where I serve, it was an astonishing figure about 10 years ago was that at that time, now we're talking about women who would be, say, between 18 and 60. Of them, only 37% of African-American women had ever had children or ever been married. I shouldn't say. So again, it's a remarkably the idea of getting men and women together. You see the. Well, anyway, I'm digressing. Let's just stay with this topic. So how did we get to this place, she asks, where fewer women are having children? And the mere mention that other women have children is triggering. And so she mentions a very good book that she wrote recently, and I want to have her on to talk about it at some point, called The End of Woman, and how American feminism, has harmed women. Isn't it paradoxical that in effect feminists are nothing of the sort? They basically are saying the only way for a woman to become who she should be is by not being a woman, by being more like a man. And this is kind of the paradox of the term feminist. Slowly but surely, she says, and almost unwittingly, we've adopted and absorbed certain basic principles that originally came largely from the Communist Party, and she details that in her book. And here are some of these 5, kind of pillars of this thinking that are sort of out there, and some of them are more obvious than others. Number 1, home is bad. Betty Friedan called home a comfortable concentration camp. It imprisoned women, and it was a terrible thing. You lock women into these unhappy marriages, and they have all these kids running around with snotty noses and, dirty diapers, and it's a terrible thing, and, women are just subject to this terrible, terrible thing. And, this is kind of the thinking that was common among those early feminists, going all the way back to the turn of the last century, coming all the way forward through the 50s and 60s. So now the first premise, again, is home is bad. Betty Friedan called it a comfortable concentration camp. Number 2, men are bad. Patriarchy is a source of women's oppression. And now, yeah, men are evil, men are bad. Toxic masculinity, all these concepts that float around today, that it's just somehow intrinsically bad to be a man. I have so many strikes against me, you all. I'm a man. I'm white. I'm heterosexual, and I'm a priest. I mean, just absolutely a worthless human being. By the way, some people size up the world today. Unbelievably awful. How could you have such a combination of these things? You just got to be a miserable human being, And that's kind of where we are. Sometimes there's just sort of this blanket condemnation that goes, "Oh, men are bad," But it's out there, and it is. Yeah. Number 3, women are good. And they're also victims. And they must always be believed. Now, first of all, women are good. Yes, I agree. Women are good. As much as I disagree with men are bad, I agree women are good. But women, like every human being I've ever met, are a mixed bag. They have struggles as well as strengths. They have beautiful aspects as well as troubling aspects. I mean, every human being is a kind of a mixed bag. That's how we are. But there's this categorization, you see. Women are good, and they're victims. Now remember, let's go to the Marxist dialectic, because this is very operative in our culture today, see. Basically, all of society is broken down into one of two groups. To two groups, the oppressed and the oppressors. And so the oppressed, the victims, are strangely are the heroes, and they're good, and the oppressors are bad. Okay, and this is obviously very simplistic, but it's almost knee-jerk in our culture today. It's part of this whole Hamas-Israel thing. It's you pick sides. Who's the oppressor and who's the oppressed? And as if that was just simply could be figured out just by a quick decision. It's never that simple, And we've talked a little bit about on this show about that conflict, and I know I have some sympathies with the plight of the Palestinian people in the West Bank and in Gaza. But it's a hard thing to figure out, who kind of fired the first shot, who's the real, source of oppression and who's the oppressor. It's just not that simple, it's just more complicated than that. And, these people who lament, oh, that's so binary, man. You're being so binary, And I said, I know, but but this is a very binary idea. Oppressor and oppressed. Simple, straightforward. You're in one category, you're bad if you're the oppressor. And I tend to be considered an oppressor because I'm white, I'm male, I'm heterosexual. And other people have fallen into the category differently. Oh, you're a woman, well, you must be the victim then, And this is just overly simplistic. So let's review. These are 3 pillars so far we've talked about. That home is bad. It's like a comfortable concentration camp, according to Betty Friedan. It locks women in these prisons, so to speak, saddles them with children and an unhappy marriage. And number 2, men are bad. Okay, and patriarchy is a source of women's oppression, as if nothing else were. Number 3, women are good and are the victims. They must always be believed. We'll pick that up. She picks that up a little bit later in the article. Number 4, work makes us free and independent. She reminds us here that Arbeit macht frei was written on the gates at Auschwitz. Work makes us free. So that, in other words, the way to women's freedom and liberation is for her to go out in the workforce and earn money. Okay. How's that working? I mean, it's okay. It's kind of funny, isn't it? That somehow what makes a woman free is not that she's a mother of children who love her, but that she works for some strange dude, I don't know, making widgets or, working in some kind of an office setting. Really? Okay. Whatever, It's an odd notion of freedom, but that somehow or another, the fact that women weren't the primary bread earners in a lot of families made them somehow less free and less dignified. And, we don't have primary breadwinners Sunday, we have Mother's Day and we have Father's Day, you see? Okay. And by the way, we had Mother's Day long before we had Father's Day. It was kind of a concession. To have a Father's Day. All right, number 5, children. Children inhibit work and they make us dependent. So again, a woman becomes free by going out and working for a living, which doesn't sound like it's free. Sounds like you got to get up at a certain time and go to a certain place and say yes, sir, and no, ma'am, and so on, and to pull a paycheck. Okay, but nevertheless, work makes us free, and then but children inhibit work and make women dependent. Okay, so children are obstacles. Children are bad, and this, of course, we know, is very widespread in our culture. All right, now continuing on with the reflections that Carrie Gress makes here, these new cultural orthodoxies have created a perfect storm to crush the traditional family. Number 1, men and women just don't trust each other. There's an awful lot of power struggle, between men and women today. It's really incredible. When I have to do a lot of marriage counseling, or at least initiate it with some couples, and it's really amazing. You're right. She's right. Men and women don't really trust each other very much, and marriages are strained or simply not happening. Women leave the home for work to achieve this dream of financial independence and so on. And so this causes, of course, high levels of abortion or children in daycare. So go out there and earn some money so you can give it to someone to raise your kid. But anyway, and here comes the key point that she makes here. This is all going on, the destruction of the family and low birth rates, low marriage rates, all of this kind of stuff. And while we can notice these things, there has to be this belief that women can never be wrong in this. This must be some outside oppressive patriarchal system or some other reason causing this. But it can never be because women make decisions that aren't maybe the best. So again, as she goes on to say here, she says, too often, even conservatives in our culture who are certainly convicted of the notion that the family's in real trouble, they still tiptoe around the women's contribution to the problem. We speak easily of the wrongs of men, with a bevy of voices toning in about how unmarriable men have become. We talk about sweeping government reforms related to women and children in hopes that we can, just pour money into the problem and so on, right? But correctives addressing the often egregious and narcissistic behavior of women, that's difficult to find, she says. Yeah. Now, again, I'm not here to bash women. There's a whole lot of levels to this problem, but at least she's willing to call it out and say, you can't just say, well, the women are the victims and the women are always right and they can never be wrong. There must, we have to say we're all part of the problem and we're all part of the solution, and recovering an understanding of motherhood and the dignity of women and so on. So on the other side of the break, we'll continue with this article, and I hope it's striking some thoughts. I'd like to hear from you if you want to call. We'll give the phone number on the other side of the break.
It was somewhat of an accident, and I have a lot of windshield time driving for work, and usually I'm listening to my gospel music, and so I wanted to find something else different. And so I started scrolling. I found Guadalupe Radio. I started listening to it on a regular basis. And what I realized, had I found this station years ago, my conversion would have probably happened years ago.
The Guadalupe Radio Network. Radio for your soul.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're currently cruising at 39,000 feet. We'll turn that seatbelt sign off for you and let you move about the cabin. Looks like we'll have you at the gate in plenty of time for you to get to confession before Mass this evening.
Wouldn't it be great if everyone regularly went to confession? Why not start today? A friendly suggestion from Guadalupe Radio Network.
Hi, this is Dr. David Anders from EWTN's Call to Communion. I believe that the ministry of Catholic radio is one of the greatest tools we have in the church for evangelism today. I hear from people all over the world on a daily basis who have encountered Christ in the Catholic Church for the first time by listening to Catholic radio. Please support the ministry of Catholic radio today. Support Guadalupe Radio Network.
Welcome back to A Life Lived Joyfully on the Guadalupe Radio Network. Give us a call. The lines are open at 877-757-9424. That's 877-757-9424.
All right, we are back, and again, the 877-757-9424. I'd like to hear, we got Mother's Day coming, and Carrie Gress has written a very good article. By the way, this is in our show notes. There's a link over our show notes at YouTube, and well, Mr. Producer, you can help me to remember the different places, Instagram, all these other places that we're at. But you'll find them in the show notes. But this article is published in the Federalist website. So yeah, I know a good number of people that work over at the Federalist. And so on. Yeah. So we're on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Rumble. So we're out there, and you can find a link to this article there. All right. Now we're still here that we're looking at kind of in a way that motherhood is in some ways in our culture under fire, and it's become almost controversial. And I talked about that in the first segment. As we move on through the article, we want to kind of take a look at some additional observations that she makes in the article, but just to review where we had just left off, there is this idea I think most people know the traditional family is in a great deal of crisis. And I think even people who are more liberal would admit that, but they're going to be more vague in their definition of family. But that said, low birth rates, low marriage rates, high divorce rates, a lot of power struggle. Men don't trust women, women don't trust men. There's just an awful lot of back and forth and so on. And all of this is going on sort of under the mantle that women can never be wrong. And so that even conservatives, she says, tiptoe around the idea that women's contribution to this problem might be. And it's always easy to bash men and say, toxic masculinity and this kind of patriarchy, these kinds of words. But it's harder to say, well, maybe there's something here that women contribute to as well as the men. All right. She spoke of she says, this is her quote, not mine. Notice again, I'm tiptoeing. She says, very few correctives are ever to address the often egregious narcissistic behavior of women in our culture. So, okay. She said it. All right. And I think we can all admit that there is a lot of that. And it's on both sides, it's men too. But the point is that there's an awful lot of, I got to do me, you do you, all this kind of stuff. And none of this contributes, to family and to unity and so on. It's all this sort of very idiosyncratic behaviors and so on. All right. Now, she now addresses some of the cracks in the narrative, namely those pillars of the sort of that came largely from communism, that talked about home being bad, work being good, that men are bad, and that work makes women free and independent, and that children inhibit work and make women dependent, and all of those. But there's now some cracks in the narrative. She says, we are now well into the third generation of women who have been told that motherhood is not essential to who we are. That word is very important, non-essential. A woman's body is designed around is built or designed around having children and nurturing them. I mean, you're really fighting nature when that's what she means by this word, that motherhood is somehow non-essential to women. Now, look, not everyone is going to be able to be a mother. There are any number of reasons, good, bad, and indifferent, but the point is that essential to a woman's very nature is that she is meant to bear children and nurture them. She's equipped for that. You're turning her into I know, but at the end of the day, biology is an important part of who we are and what we're for. And it comes from the hand of God. All right, well, let's continue on with her thoughts. Now, we're well into the third generation of women being told that motherhood is non-essential to who we are. The original zeal, though, for the shoulder-padded, briefcase-carrying, work-a-day woman is waning. Now, many women are beginning to notice that doing things that don't conform to human nature is painful. You violate nature, and eventually it comes calling, What's the old saying that God always forgives, man sometimes forgives, nature never forgives? We stop acting according to the nature of things. We pay a price. Now, right now, for example, just to give you a simple example, but most of us are completely out of sync with the rhythms of our body and the rhythms of nature, so that there's something called sunup and sundown. There's something called nighttime. And we used to say, gee, when it gets dark, you can't do a whole lot of stuff. Maybe I'm supposed to slow down and sit around a little fire and talk to the family a little bit and then go to bed. But we stay up till, 11, 12, 13, in the evening. We have all these artificial lights. We pay almost no attention to the rhythms of the day in our own bodies, of course, that need more rest than most of us get. And then we're stressed and we're frustrated and we're angry and we have all these weird autoimmune things and all these stress-related diseases, and we wonder why. You see what I mean? When you don't live according to the nature of things and you live sort of artificially or thinking you can ignore the nature of the body's need for rest, you suddenly begin to pay the price. And we are collectively paying a lot of price in our culture. We're stressed, we're tired and frustrated, and on and I go. All right. Now, it goes on to say here that she cites a woman who says here, feminism has left women like me single, childless, and depressed. Yeah, I mean, when you're not, doing, kind of the most essential things in life, you sort of get a little bit lonely and angry. Yeah. Okay. And so the error that children are somehow the enemy and having children and being married is a terrible thing and that women need to get free of it, she says, this error was a grave one and women are paying for it, like gamblers in a casino that has been fixed. Women are not men and are living the single life with its casual encounters. But women, she says, have a lot more to lose in that equation. See, and so again, she's quoting someone else here, but I'm just kind of speaking of it straightforward. Now she says Wyatt, the woman she was quoting, is not the only one recognizing feminism's failure by pushing us to become like men. Okay, again, I said to this earlier, isn't that an oddity, a paradox, that the word feminist really it's anti-feminine. It's like the only way a woman can be truly actualized is to be like a man. Strange. And the title feminism sort of falls away as a kind of a farcical title for the movement. Okay, let me just continue again. I'll start this paragraph. Wyatt isn't the only one recognizing feminism's failure by pushing us to become like men. The guilt, estrangement, and grief that many women feel around Mother's Day arise from the rich realities of physical, psychological, and spiritual mothering that women are meant to offer to those around them. Try as feminism might to deny it, motherhood as a general attitude to care for others, whether one has biological children or not, is vital not just to the broader culture, but to the lives of individual women. The triggered pain that so many experience is nature's way of telling us how crucial a mother's role is for everyone involved. Now, by the way, I want to make a side observation here. Some people say, well, wait a minute, Father, aren't you and like religious sisters and so on, aren't you living contrary to nature? You don't get married, and And I said, I am not a single man. I have a bride, the church. Thank you. Beautiful bride, by the way, but long honey-do list. But the church is my bride. And likewise, religious sisters are wed to Christ. But there's also, I think, a beautiful thing. Priests are called to fatherhood. I mean, it's a funny paradox that when you say, well, I'm not going to be getting married, I won't be having children of my own, and suddenly 1,000 people are calling you father. And if you thought you could kind of live a quiet single life, the honey-do list, man, to be a parish priest is pretty long, man. So all I can say is that God has a kind of a funny sense of humor when it comes to this. He says, I tell you, anyone who's given up family or land or property or marriage or children for my sake will you not, in fact, he says, receive 1,000-fold. And persecution besides, and so on. So the Lord has a funny way of doing it. And of course, so many of the religious sisters, we have a good number of nuns here in my convent, and thank God for every one of them. And they're like sisters and mothers to me. They're incredibly helpful, and the people here love them, and it's just, it's a beautiful picture of family. And those women are every bit as feminine and mothering as married women I know, because they're espoused to the church, which is the body of Christ. Okay. So again, that's a side issue. It is not natural motherhood, but as Carrie is saying here in the article, there's a type of a spiritual motherhood too that's common, and that women instinctively are, I think, have a sense of, unless it's sort of pushed out of them by this modern notion that they really belong carrying briefcases and running corporate CEO kind of positions. And hey, I don't think they can't, but I would say that is that really going to be the source of happiness? All right. So we see then that there is she's speaking here of feminism's failure. Oh, sorry, y'all. Somebody loves me. I don't even know where my phone is. All right. So she says here, Wyatt is not the only one recognizing feminism's failure by pushing us to become more like men. The guilt, estrangement, and grief of many women that they feel around Mother's Day arise from the rich realities of physical, psychological, and spiritual mothering that women are meant to offer to those around them. So that's review. Try as feminine might be to deny it, motherhood as a general attitude is integral to women, and so we see all of these particular things. Now we're going to take a break here in a moment. I'm going to finish out this article, but I sure would love to hear from you. And again, we 877-757-9424. Give me a call. What do you think, about it? Have you heard some people get frustrated at Mother's Day and don't like all the attention that women get? So what's going on there, do you think? So with all those things in mind, we're going to go to the break. But again, it's 877-757-9424. You can also put a question in through the YouTube page or Instagram and Rumble and so on. All right, so you go ahead and give us a call. Our phones are back up. They had been down earlier this week. And I'll see you on the other side of the break.
Thanks for listening to A Life Lived Joyfully. Do you have a question for Monsignor Pope, or would you like to comment? Give us a call now at 877-757-9424. Again, that number is 877-757-9424. We'll be back after the break.
Do you long to hear God's voice? Lord, Teach Me to Pray. The pre-Ignatian prayer series will open your heart to His voice, to the peace you are seeking, and the only love that fulfills the human heart, Jesus. God is calling you to true joy, knowing Jesus personally. Lord Teach Me to Pray is free. Go to LordTeachMeToPray.com, click on the red box, order Lord Teach Me to Pray now. Go to LordTeachMeToPray.com.
This is a Messy Family Minute with Mike and Alicia Hernan. Many parents are greatly concerned about the way that secular culture influences their children. But what's a parent to do? It's impossible for us to isolate our children from all outside influences. To inoculate their children against secular culture, Catholic parents need to create a family culture that is more dynamic and appealing than the culture that the world offers.
Family culture is the unspoken system that binds your family together and communicates expectations, beliefs, and values more powerfully than any written word. It forms the way of life for your family. Parents need to be thoughtful and intentional about the culture they are stewarding within their home, because those messages are being heard by all of your children all of the time.
A strong, positive family culture is the secret weapon of Catholic parents, because it will help children to recognize that the culture of the world is shallow and unsatisfying. For a free download on how to develop your own family culture, visit us at messyfamilyminute.org.
Ever feel like life is just too busy, too much? Constant noise, social ed, traffic, work, paying bills. It just doesn't seem to let up. Well, maybe it's time for a change. God offers us relief and hope. So if you're feeling like you need more peace and less chaos, then find your hope today. Begin at CatholicsComeHome.com.
Welcome back to A Life Lived Joyfully on the Guadalupe Radio Network. Give us a call. The lines are open at 877-757-9424. That's 877-757-9424.
And we are back, and just considering this on the eve of Mother's Day, we might say, just considering this essay, a very thoughtful essay by Carrie Gress, written over at the Federalist, and it's linked at some of our sources here as well. She's coming to the conclusion of the article here, and very important insight, not just for women, but for all of us. So she says here, what we are watching are self-inflicted wounds of a culture that has been trying to erase motherhood for 5 decades. And the results are not pretty. Bad mothers, absent mothers, women who long to be mothers, a rise in loneliness, depression, and anxiety, all bring into stark relief the unconquerable truth that women's lives are generally made richer and fuller with husbands and children. And whether we have a family or not, our lives are richer when they're outward focused and not just centered on self. Now that is an insight for everyone. I tell you, I have a kind of a monastic streak in me. I like to go and be alone sometimes. You know, when you're a public person like I am, sometimes you just want to go where nobody knows who you are and walk the beach and just be, alone. But that said, I do know that if I do too much of that solitude stuff, my life gets pretty depressed and dark. And I get too focused. My life is alive when I'm outwardly focused and thinking about other people and what's going on and trying to help. That's just a truth for all of us, and so on. So again, this is I think it was Jean-Paul Sartre who said, "Hell is other people." No, hell is very lonely, actually. There's maybe a lot of people down there, but they don't live in community. They're all very selfish, narcissistic, or most of them are. And so you see the vision is that we want to realize this is a good insight, even beyond the question of Mother's Day or feminism or any of these things. Okay, outward focused rather than inwardly narcissistically focused on self. Now, goes on to say, certainly women have and always will work. If you look at any culture, women contribute to the work, whether in the home or in the community. Yes, women have always worked and will always work. But making career the narrow focus will never satisfy a female's heart. Marriage and family are not meant to be an idol, for there will always be pain and suffering in life. But what family offers is purpose, is focus, meaning, and a reason to grow up. It requires parents to put aside their own desires to meet the needs of others. And so, again, beautifully reminding us of the nature of family. The sometimes terrifying vulnerability of giving oneself to another, of risking heartache or abandonment, lends a strong appeal to the call to be independent and to prioritize work over family. The ideal of independence does not require waiting for someone to ask you out on a date. It does not depend on a proposal of marriage or of a positive pregnancy test. It allows women to live with the belief that they are in control of their destiny and don't need anyone else to complete them. But no woman is an island, and the decisions made when we are least vulnerable radically affect the outcomes later in life when we are the most vulnerable. All right. Being unencumbered when it comes to it with its own hidden cost. In other words, being unencumbered comes with its own hidden cost. The power and control that have been preached to women can never love us back. In their very essence, power and control are not love, all right? They're about control. And that's not about love. And by the way, maybe another way to put this is, look, the most important things in life aren't things, okay? They're people. The people that you love, and not too likely will your boss and your office computer and other things be at your bedside when you're dying. It's going to be your kids. It'll be your husband or other people, who love you and surround you with that love. At the end of the day, that's those are the really important things, right? Those who will be with us as we head into our dotage, we might say. And I'm beginning to edge into dotage, I might say. And I am awfully grateful for a lot of people who helped me with different things that I thought I could always just do all by myself. And now I have to ask for help. And there's something proper about that. Okay, so this, so here we go then. She kind of is wrapping it up here. The response to women being triggered by Mother's Day should not be the muting of corporate emails or changing the name to Primary Caregivers Day. Lord help us all. It should be it should be what we give to anyone in pain, namely charity and patience and love. In other words, if someone's triggered by Mother's Day, well, let's listen to them a little. Not run around and try to change the culture again and, let's mute motherhood here. And no, but okay, there may be some pain in that. Maybe she wanted to be a mother but couldn't. It hurts. It's a reminder. I do know a very close friend of mine who speaks that way at Mother's Day. It isn't she's against motherhood, that she just, she had some issues with fertility and just couldn't have children of her own. So, and it hurts. And so, listen. I listened to her, but I don't accept talk, and she doesn't talk that way. But I wouldn't accept talk by when a woman say, "Well, therefore we shouldn't have Mother's Day because I'm upset." Well, no, that's narcissistic. Okay. So we should lend a listening ear, though, to those who are hurt and troubled. But again, we want to help women through troubles, but not get rid of moms, and get rid of motherhood or recognition of motherhood. Okay. So there's a lot here in this article that's very thoughtful, and I recommend it to you again. Carrie Gress, the title, Being Triggered by Mother's Day Proves the Irreplaceable Role of Moms. And it's over at the Federalist, or you can find the link at the show notes. Now, look, a couple thoughts about this that I want to add. And that is, I also think that we have been through a long period of, I would call it men bashing. It's very popular to bash men. And a lot of, we have a serious, I think, crisis in our culture regarding fatherhood. This is a problem in the church. Too many bishops, didn't, if someone was messing with a kid who's a father, he's going to go after and find that person and make sure they stop. Whereas an awful lot of bishops just kind of shrugged and said, some of these priests are acting badly. They're kind of, you see, we need fathers who love their kids and fight for them, you see? And this is missing frequently in our culture today. But part of the reason it's missing, and maybe we'll talk about this more when Father's Day comes around, but part of the reason it's missing is because we've been told not to do that over and over and over again. In fact, it starts out very young in school, when boys are literally medicated to behave more like women. Oh, look, let's be clear. Young boys are full of spit and vinegar. They're aggressive. They're full of energy, and and this is how they are. Now you have to discipline a boy to say, you got to sit down and concentrate here. This is not the time to be fiddling around with whatever paper you're fiddling with there, whatever. Pay attention, do your work, but not to try to medicate them so they become more like girls, kind of passive and he's got ADHD, and well, maybe, but an awful lot of this is. They want boys to behave more like girls, and that's a bad place to. It's not, again, God always forgives. Human beings sometimes forgive. Nature never forgives. Trying to ask boys to be like girls is not a good idea. So, again, I'm not going to get into the whole thing there, but I want to say there's also, I think, in our culture, if you will, it's very popular to bash men. And it's just like, hey, like Gloria Steinem, had the infamous line, a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. And, there's a kind of an applause that you hear, sort of, oh, yes, right, and no one's allowed to criticize it. Well, I'm criticizing it, see? Somehow women need men too, and, we need each other is the point. Now, look, further, there's this attitude, that men are stupid. I call them the men are stupid commercials. Have you ever seen these things? There's some stupid, hapless, idiot man in the commercial who can't figure something out. Oh, what am I going to do? Oh, dear, that's not how you do that. And some wise woman or some smart aleck kid corrects him, and, oh, thanks a lot. I'm such a buffoon. Did I mention that I'm a buffoon? And so I call them the men are stupid commercials, we see that a lot. Now, after a steady diet of that for 30, 40, 50 years, why is it surprising that an awful lot of men sort of begin to imitate, sort of being stupid and hapless, and all they care about is drinking beer and watching the game. Well, again, I think at some level, if that's all we're there's just a constant criticism of men and so-called toxic masculinity. At some point, we start to play the role. I don't excuse it. I'm just saying it, growing up as a young boy and being told you have to behave more like a girl and all of that kind of stuff, well, eventually they start to play the role. And then it doesn't surprise us that as they grow older, men in their early 20s are sort of irresponsible and kind of goofing off, drinking beer, or staying in mom's basement and playing video games or whatever. Men, looking at porn and stuff. All this terrible stuff that we hear about men today. But part of it is they're even told that, well, if you try to ask a girl out on a date, that could be sexual harassment. And again, I'm not trying to say, oh, men were victims. I'm not saying that either. There's a lot of bad male behavior out there. And cut it out, guys. But we have to, at some level, begin to see that we reap what we sow. And when you sow these attitudes that men are bad, people start to play the role. And likewise, when you sow these attitudes for women, well, motherhood's terrible, it's confining, it's constraining, and it's just in a form of slavery. And is it any wonder that a lot of women have picked up and said, well, my fulfillment is not in motherhood or the home, it's going to be out here in the career path. And it doesn't work for women, and it doesn't work for men that way either. So when we come back, we'll sort of put a bow on it, and if there's any calls, I'd love to hear from you. 877-757-9424, and I'll see you on the other side of the break.
Arm yourself for the daily spiritual battle. Visit St. Michael's Armory for beautiful sacramentals, recast antique metals and religious jewelry, and our exclusive sterling silver and wool brown scapulars. Take up these means to strengthen your soul and arm yourself well for the battle of life. stmichaelsarmory.com. That's stmichaelsarmory.com. Spiritual armor for the battle of life.
Hey Donnie, what two important things do we receive when we go to Mass?
Scripture and the Eucharist.
Great job, you're so smart. As parents, we're the primary educators of our Catholic faith to our children, and if you don't know your Catholic faith as well as you should, that's okay. Just tune in daily to the Guadalupe Radio Network by logging online to grnonline.com. The Guadalupe Radio Network. Listen, learn, love, and pass it on.
Thank you for listening to the Guadalupe Radio Network and being part of the family. Families pray for each other. We would be honored if you would let us pray with you and for you. You don't even have to tell us your name. Just go to our website, grnonline.com, or call our prayer request line and leave us a message at 800-395-4008. That's 800-395-4008. We will be praying for you every day.
Welcome back to A Life Lived Joyfully on the Guadalupe Radio Network. Give us a call. The lines are open at 877-757-9424. That's 877-757-9424.
And we are back, and looking at this very, very good article by Carrie Gress on Mother's Day, and the fact that some increasing numbers kind of get triggered or kind of get frowny-faced when we celebrate Mother's Day or Father's Day, and well, we don't do Single People's Day, different things like that. And look, they're out there, and there's a number of reasons that someone might be troubled, but at the end of the day, look, let's still celebrate what ought to be celebrated, and it is an unfortunate truth. Increasing numbers in our culture are not able to get to this place that we honor, namely called fatherhood and motherhood. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Most of them ain't good. And a lot of these wounds are self-inflicted. And so this article that Carrie's been talking about here, she's been reminding us that an awful lot of these promises that were made to by the feminists to women, that your fulfillment would be in career and work, and this is what makes you free, and that somehow having children and being married locks you into a kind of a prison and so on, and you can't be self-fulfilled that way, is, it's contrary to nature, and we're discovering now that an awful lot of people are pretty sad and lonely, and no wonder it doesn't work, because it's contrary to the very nature of how our bodies are designed. Let's talk about both men and women in this regard. There is what we call a nuptial meaning to the body. That is to say, if we look at the simple way our bodies are designed, there is some aspect of our body. I don't want to get this as family radio, but we have certain aspects of our anatomy, and this part of the anatomy says this: you are for another of the opposite sex. This is about others, not just meeting someone and marrying, but the children that come. you see. Our whole body, it's literally inscribed in our bodies that there's a nuptial meaning to the body. It's inscribed, as I say, literally in our flesh. Now, what that means then, of course, is that there is this call that we have to be married and to live in families and to not just procreate, but also to raise up our children. Now, we'll talk about the raising up of the kids in a minute, but again, you start to see that, as I said earlier, that even in places like, say, the priesthood or religious life, you say, well, you all aren't doing that. And I said, well, yes, we are. We're doing it in more of a spiritualized way. But I have thousands of people who call me father. Now, they're not literally my children in terms of physical descent, but there's a spiritual fatherhood. And I have a bride, the church. And she's beautiful. And likewise, the religious sisters and so on, they have a groom. His name is Jesus. And so they are wed to the church as the body of Christ. Okay, now, so they're even there, you see, although we're not living it out in a sexual way, we are nevertheless summoned to this truth that we're called to a nuptial relationship, which is we call marriage, and for most people that's worked out in their actual marriages, but there are those who enter into kind of spiritual marriages, but it is still matrimonial. And our bodies say that you are not just about you, that you need to be paired with someone of the opposite sex, and part of your body fits with their part of the body, and this is where children come from as well. And so this is the nature of marriage, of family, and so on. So the nuptial meaning to the body. Now, not only that, but when children come, it's important for them to have a father and a mother, not just a mother, and but a father and a mother. And this is meant, this is not just because, well, like me biologically, yeah, I do, but it's more than that. So that a child needs both a father and a mother, not just one mother or two mothers or two fathers or one father. Ideally, they're going to be raised by a father and a mother. And the woman expresses the feminine genius of being human, and the father expresses the masculine genius of being human. And this is necessary for the child to develop a full sense of humanity and being human. And they learn important things from their father that they didn't learn from their mother, and vice versa. And so therefore to say, well, who needs fathers around? They're just nothing but trouble. Some women talk, I've heard some over the years say, I have 4 kids and I had a husband. He's just the 5th kid, that kind of a thing. It's a very short-sighted way of understanding, Men have an important role, and so do, obviously, mothers. And so we're celebrating Mother's Day this coming weekend, and, well, we should. And we're going to be celebrating Father's Day next month, and, well, we should. But to see that in our culture, we're destroying both fatherhood and motherhood, sadly, we're doing a pretty good job of it. And likewise, the whole family's in crisis, and our birth rates are low. If it wasn't for our immigrants, we'd be... Well, as I say, you can't maintain a growing nation, if you will, without a growing population. The economy will not expand if the number of people aren't. And, well, what about overpopulation? Oh, okay. Well, we're not overpopulated. We have plenty of food and other resources, all right? So I think that we're a long way from being overpopulated, all right? And I'm not going to get into that topic today. But the point is that, again, thank God for our immigrants, because they kind of supply for the lack of growth that we have just in our own internal population here. With all that in mind, happy Mother's Day to all the women. We're grateful for your sacrifices, for the great love you've shown, and a lot of us are hard to love. I would say, though, to all the children, not all of you are mothers out there, but we all have a mother, and one of the greatest things that we can do, I think, for our mother is to be the kind of son or daughter that they would want us to be, to love God, to be in church on Sunday, to be living good, decent, virtuous lives, That's what our mothers really want for us. And it's a beautiful gift because that's what makes us happy, to live the life of virtue. And this brings us joy. It brings happiness. It brings also, other virtues along with it. It's the greatest gift. Go ahead, get your mother flowers. If she's able, take her out to lunch. Okay, that's all nice. But really, the real gift that we are called to give our mothers is that great gift of living a good, decent, virtuous life. And how pleasant that is. Kind of a sad thing that I think occurs on Mother's Day is an awful lot of people who don't normally go to church sort of humor their mother and take them to church. Or I'll go with you on Mother's Day. But it's an empty, kind of sad gift. Okay, you come once a year. Really? What she wants and what God wants for you is that you're in church every Sunday and that you're listening to his instruction and receiving his sacraments and growing in holiness. See, now that's a gift you can really give your mother. It's a beautiful gift to be worthy sons and daughters of these noble women. And if you had a rough relationship with your mother, all right, pray for her. God doesn't summon perfect people to motherhood or fatherhood. But nevertheless, they are our mothers, and I don't think we have even the slightest clue of some of the sacrifices they made for us. Those late nights when we were crying, needed to be consoled, and there they were. So again, happy Mother's Day to all those who have the dignity of being mothers, and to all of us who are their sons and daughters. Let's strive to live in a way that's worthy. And may Almighty God bless you all, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.